Welcome back to another episode of AI Meets API. Today we're joined by Victoria Kodc. Victoria has had an incredible journey, from building original IP in the semiconductor world to becoming a key contributor in MuleSoft's most cutting-edge AI initiatives, including AI Chain and Agent Fabric. Hosting today's episode is Ajay Konda, CGO of ProwessSoft. Over to you, Ajay.
Hi Victoria, it's great to have you. You are one of the highly recommended guests by the previous guest, saying that you are one of the person who has a real hands-on experience on some of the newest things in the MuleSoft world, and especially on the AI side.
Thank you so much for having me here. And yeah, I'm really lucky to be a part of such a phenomenal community, both of muleys that I work with, but also with our partners. So really excited to be here today.
Since you have already hit few milestones in your career, what is the one really stand out for you, something you are really proud of?
Yeah, I've been very lucky that I've gotten experience doing real life implementation, like in my semiconductor experience, really building literally the machines that do all the processing for chemicals in the semiconductor world and got to work with even plasma. But I think my proudest moment has to do with last year when I met some amazing muleys like Amir Khan, Tommaso and Chuck and Jeroen, and they all were part of this wonderful initiative called Mule Chain and now MuleSoft AI Chain. And it started out as an open source project where a lot of merging different AI frameworks were starting. And we saw the focus around that is all around orchestration, right? It's how are you connecting to these LLMs? How are you going to make sure it's reusable and all of these things? And when we were hearing these conversations, it sounded a lot of what MuleSoft was founded on. So it was just such a natural, direction for us to go into and start investing and looking into it. And both partnering with our customers, partners around what are the capabilities right now that are needed in the field as people are trying to bring in all of these agentic or AI applications and projects to life.
That's great. Yeah, I heard so much about this AI chain project. Can you give me more insight into customers who are already adopting MuleSoft? How can they start using this AI chain service, and what scenarios they have to consider?
Yeah, absolutely. So we started out with our first connector focusing around MuleSoft AI chain, and it really enabled you to unlock and orchestrate connectivity to a multitude of LLMs and models. And the thing that we have seen occurring is that every single provider goes and releases a new model every X amount of months. So what was, the hottest thing 6 months ago is now outdated, but you're not going to scrap your entire project, right? Things are going to be moving on. How are you able to quickly adjust and be able to go back into QA and then back out in prod? So this is where we saw such a need for a connector where customers are able to go and test out, prototype, and then go and release it into prod, all of these different AI workflows or applications. And we already have a ton of customers that are using them for validation of like emails that are coming in, triaging to what type of workflows that should be executing. Because, if we look back at traditional programming or implementation, every time you had to go and bring something to life, you had to basically create a true statement, right, for it to execute. But with LLMs, now you have that flexibility because as a human being, we could see it's like, hey, this is not perfectly commented to fit into this category, but it really does fit into this category. And that's what LLMs allow you to have that flexibility to. So now you're truly future-proofing a lot of these processes instead of having to rebuild them continuously. So that's one thing that I've seen a lot of our customers benefiting from. The other thing is that we have this connector is still open source and is going to start becoming productized within our roadmap is the web crawler connector. It's really focusing on going through the internet and accessing data that you might need to be refreshed every month, every week, or things like that, or listening to specific updates. We have some customers that are even crawling their own websites with it because, as an enterprise, you become so siloed, you might not even know who's doing what products are being released. I know that that's something we struggle with in sales Salesforce, we've released new functionality within all these different clouds, and you might not be aware, and people aren't going to always notify you that these changes happen. So this expedites and really unlocks those silos, so you're able to still get access to all the data that you need.
I was about to ask you a use case. You already mentioned one use case. Can you tell me something from a use cases, standard use cases like order processing or IDP use cases, where I can really go and use it, this AI chain?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of the things that we've seen, especially coming in for multilingual, processes. So if you have an invoice that is coming in a multitude of different formats, and they're also coming in different languages because you're a global business, this allows you to kind of, one, be able to, again, do the triage of like which flow does it should be executed in. And then additionally, it might even require different information to be pulled because depending where this invoice is originating, which country, you might need additional information. So this is where we're able to use our AI connectors where they're doing a ton of validation, a ton of like reviewing, and then we're able to forward it to IDP where it's now going to do that extraction, and then it's going to be able to create a structure of this data that was originally unstructured and then push it back into whatever backend systems that you need for processing. So we're seeing this is already a ton of live use cases that we're seeing with customers. And actually the most benefit we're seeing is within SMB space, because a lot of times that doesn't have a lot of standardization or regulations. So it's really hard to scale those type of use cases, but this is where you're kind of building this future-proof workflow where it's actually scalable.
That's great. That sounds very interesting. The another thing in your profile mentioned about is agent fabric. So I really want to understand what is the agent fabric and how does fit into the whole ecosystem of MuleSoft.
Yeah, absolutely. I think besides us being known for the orchestration layer of integration, our other area is always providing API management, security, and governance in place for those integrations. So whether they were built within Mule or you're leveraging things outside of Mule. So the same concept we are extending into the agentic world. We know that agents are going to be built wherever you're going to have things that are being built with Python, where there's going to be things that are built within vendor ecosystems. But we are seeing that customers are going into a multitude, very diversified environment of agents. But how are you going to really have them communicate with each other? How are you going to catalog them? And how are you going to have visibility into all the assets that are extended to those agents and within those domains? So this is where we're putting Agent Fabric, and we're really extending it to our customer base to now not just have your API assets being cataloged, secured, but also now extending all of that into your agentic assets, whether that is going to be the agents themselves, or it's going to be your MCP services, or specifically the tooling that you're going to have that are needed to be surfaced to those agents.
That's great. So is that means that these assets will be listed even in the exchange?
I don't want to give too much away. We are going to have an announcement coming very soon, but we are reusing a lot of things that are very familiar to our customer base. There's obviously going to be an introduction of a couple of new functionalities, but if you're a long-time Muley, you will fit right in. You're not going to have to learn too much to start doing some real damage and building out that agentic enterprise.
I listened to the your webinar recently did with Harsh. It was really good. And one term that came out of that is agentic experience. What exactly is this agentic experience?
Yeah, I think a lot of times when people think about agents, the first thing that comes to mind is kind of like the chatbots, the website chatbots, just because it's the easiest thing to visualize. But what we're really seeing as enterprises are maturing, there is this much faster shift into, instead of building a monolithic agent or agentic application, they're really breaking it down into microservices of agents, right? And those agents are going to be working together to go and figure out the process and be able to provide an answer. But this is where this agentic experience really comes in and is really crucial, is that no matter what technology comes to fruition, there's always going to be the people and the process, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times that is the hardest part of rolling out any type of initiative. It's more, it's much more complex than even sometimes adopting new technology. So when it comes to the people and process, a lot of times it's easier to extend what people are familiar with to already the new technology that you're trying to adopt. So what I'm saying in this is that if you have your employee base that is always using Slack and you are trying to roll out this agentic adoption, probably the best place to go and roll it out into is Slack because they're already living in
Mm-hmm.
that experience.
That's right.
So, and you wouldn't want to change it so drastically where they need to have completely new understanding of how to use a Slack app or things like that. You want it to be almost as seamless. So it's kind of a common sense of how their day-to-day looks like and extending into that. And that could look like Slack is just one of an examples, but for your sellers, obviously living within Salesforce, that's where
Mm-hmm.
Agentforce comes in, right? You're able to go and leverage Agentforce, and it's just a natural extension when you're in your opportunities and you're trying to progress them, do summaries and updates. It's able to assist you right then and there because that's your day to day. If you
Mm-hmm.
are in finance, maybe that will be within your ERP and you're leveraging assets like that. But when you're traveling, most likely you need to request, travel permission from your manager, and then the manager is going to say, "Yeah, you could go and travel." And you're already interacting in Slack. Why would you need to
Yes.
go to a completely new system to go and continue that
Mm-hmm.
experience? And that's where we talk about agentic experiences. It's like a natural extension to what is already your day to day looks like. And this is where a lot of headless agents really come in, where you're able to bring and multitude of agents, no matter where they live, right? If you're doing travel approvals, you're probably going to need to have finance team do some budget approvals. You
Mm-hmm.
might have to go and request a ticket saying, documenting your process. You might have to go and review hotel options. Like all of these places are completely different systems, but
Mm-hmm.
you're able to centralize it through Slack and you don't have to go and leave outside of that experience. So it really streamlines it and makes it really easier to adopt by users.
One thing I was about to ask you mentioned is called headless agent. Is this something outside the MuleSoft that is going to live? Is it inside the MuleSoft, or how does it work actually? Is it like an API scaffolding, or what exactly headless agent?
Yeah, so a headless agent is an agent that doesn't have a specific experience UI on top of it. So it's something that could be packaged up almost like a microservice, but it has agentic components where it has planning and reasoning, and then it has tooling extensions where it's able to go and perform those actions. So you are able to absolutely, host those components either on Mule on our infrastructure, or you're able to have them hosted anywhere else. It's just thinking about like the same as you have a Python class running somewhere, you're able to host that in Mule and then you can host it somewhere else, kind of
Mm-hmm.
concepts like that. But additionally, we're seeing also a change where vendors are now exposing their agents as headless agents as well. So you're able to go and call those out. The things that we're really offering is that we're able to add additional like guardrails around these things.
Mm-hmm.
So you're able to have security and additionally have visibility into what backend systems a lot of agents, especially homegrown agents, are going to be interacting with, because a lot of those are already going to be your existing APIs. So we've seen a lot of things in the news like agents crashing people's systems because they're making 6,000 requests within a minute. And that is something that we do not want to happen, especially on an enterprise level. So those are the things that we're able to really shut down, provide security and visibility and observability to. And you make sure that you're secure and your data also is protected as these agents are going to be doing things on your behalf.
Another thing I want to check with you, Victoria, is on the AI integration patterns. Most of the listeners are the people who are in the integration world, familiar with so many integration partners. It's a SOAP or web services or
Mm-hmm.
REST APIs, so many, or async, sync, so many. So, what are the new patterns that are evolving in the AI integration, and how do people cope with them?
Yeah, I think the most popular one is the human in the loop. I think you cannot escape that, especially with AI right now. a lot of different pilots and use cases being adopted, you still want someone to go and review it to make sure that no hallucinations are happening and things are up to par, and especially enterprise standard. So a lot of times the agent is able to go and perform a lot of actions for you, but that final step of execution is going to be given to the human. So then they're able to review it, they're able to approve it, and they're able to make sure that whatever is going to be surfaced or done on behalf of them is up to par to their standards. So I think that is the most important one right now, and I think this is the one that most people are investing into for accommodating and making sure that you're able to have that human in the loop, and it streamlines a lot of that. And I think it's a lot of like business process management, or almost like, a nod to that. We're seeing a lot of the similar patterns from history are kind of coming back. But additionally, I think with arrival of A2A from Google, we see that now Rust has been such a huge standard and leveraging HTTP. However, we're seeing that they included gRPC support and things like that. And as a lot of agents or a lot of companies are going to start rolling out their own agents, they're going to look for optimization. And I believe, leveraging the right protocols and accessing the right data and having all of those things implemented is going to be where they're going to start looking for optimization as well. So I think that is something that we should be definitely paying attention to, but I think we're a little bit ways away for that.
Okay, sounds good. Are they all, most of them are still asynchronous patterns, or are there any asynchronous patterns that are evolving?
Yeah, there's definitely asynchronous, especially we're seeing with advanced RAG, where you're performing actually multitude different requests at the same time. So there's definitely certain patterns that are arising like around asynchronous, and especially with more and more agents that are being built out, we're going to possibly see things like broadcasting and things like that to announce, hey, I put something on the queue. If you're subscribed to this queue, this is all the data that is accessible, like do what you want with it, right? So if we think about it, for example, you have at the end of the day, you go through your accounts, these are the changes that have happened within your opportunities, and you want this to be announced to your sales leadership. You could want this to be announced to your product, right? What if there's features that are being looked at and things like that? So you have basically a topic that you're publishing with all this information to, and then all the subscribers are able to go and leverage this information and then make sense of it. Maybe create their own reports, maybe add it to summaries, or maybe add it to action plans for different individual to review.
Another one is this transfer protocols, right? A2A, MCP, and there is so much discussions and going on around it. What is something you feel people are missing out while trying to understand them or using them?
Yeah, I think the biggest misconception is that when people see these protocols, they view them as implementation instead of a standard. There's a whole other area of that. Of course, it helps to have a standardization, and especially as you're going to have a multitude of agents that are going to be, again, vendor specific, or you're going to be building in house. How are you going to start having them be able to communicate with each other? How are you going to have these SaaS applications be able to surface their data for agents? All of this is very important. But this does not take away that you still need those standard implementation patterns and designs, and have people that are very familiar with enterprise technology and integration. MCP, unfortunately, isn't a magic wand that is going to make all of that go away. And same with A2A, but I think with A2A, it's not as prominent right now because there aren't that many companies in the world that are processing or having hundreds or thousands of agents that are communicating between each other, right? But I think the same issues will start to arise that we're seeing with MCP, where unfortunately, after you add more than 10 or 20 tools to MCP server, they start to not perform as well, right? Their operation might not be called, even if you perfectly describe the operation that needs to be executed, because right now the technology or the LLMs are unfortunately just not there. So there's other things that outside of even MCP that people are leveraging, like native tooling, but also UTCP, which is also a new protocol around tooling. So because the space is so new, we're going to see a lot of things that are going to emerge, and then certain things are going to become standard, certain things are going to disappear. I know Cisco also created their own equivalent, and they recently announced that they're going to be giving it to the Linux Foundation. So it's going to be really more so an open source project instead of their standard.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, UTCP is something new to me. This is the first time I'm hearing. Over the last 2 years, right, so much being evolved on the AI space. What is something as a API or integration practitioner that surprised you, or something you thought may happen, but it happened so fast?
Yeah, I think the one thing is that I feel like a lot of people are not seeing that realistically, a lot of these AI innovations, yes, they're brand new, especially with the LLMs themselves and the data sets for training these models. But the implementation aspect is very similar to the evolution of enterprise integrations that we have done. And I think that right now, that foundation is so critical for the success of this agentic enterprise adoptions, right? If you cannot unlock your systems, if you cannot have your systems be effectively performing, you're not going to, unfortunately, get your agentic enterprise. And additionally, I think when we start to see and try to like prototype a lot of these use cases, a lot of times we're still thinking about how we would build it if it was a website and we're clicking a button, instead of thinking about, hey, how would an agent operate on this data? How should we make or build out requests around that? I think there's new, designs that are going to start emerging, and we need to start thinking about it. Well, this agent isn't going to be imitating as if we're clicking a button on a website or we're clicking a button on our mobile device. They're going to be running in the background, right? Like, how does that look like? Should we be building out our API to support that type of operational or business work? And I think that's going to be a new shift. And I think the way that people are going to start designing their business APIs are going to be also a little bit different. But all of the foundation that we have figured out through the last 2 decades around security, standards, governance, I think that is going to be the most critical more than ever now, because we're not going to have humans being running these executions or even building them. We're going to have agents. So it's a lot to consider around that.
Yep, definitely. One thing, on one side, it is the new use cases around the AI that is coming up and we are coping with. The other side of it is the API professionals are coping with the how to use AI in speeding up the things they are already doing it. So what are your thoughts on it, what you are seeing?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of benefits of leveraging AI, especially for prototyping, like creating the definitions of things and accelerating just understanding of what, again, the implementation designs that you want to go with. I think a lot of times when people would be building out specific use cases, they would lean on their expertise and what they have done in the past. But I think now AI is able to help you kind of explore a multitude of best practices and is able to help you prototype and figure out what is going to be the best course of action for your business, and get to that point, or what's not going to be the best course of action for your business, right? Like fail quickly as well. And I think that's a huge benefit. I think the other part of it, and I'm also guilty of this coming from the developer world, is that documentation has never been more important. I think that a lot of times people are thinking of like, hey, I'm just going to have something generate code for me, and then it's going to document it. If you cannot read that code, it is not going to help you. And in 10, 20 years, if you didn't know what was being written, nobody's going to know what was written. And this is why it's going to be so important to leverage a lot of these AI tools also for not just accelerating development, but also making sure that are the documentation up to par that we expect from our developers? Are we going to be able to actually, or have we built out an asset of high quality that it could be serviced as an internal product for us to re-leverage? Because again, these APIs are going to start being the responsibility, skills, and tool sets for agents. And the descriptions have never been more important, right? It's kind of like, it's going to be the agent's resume of what they're allowed to do and what they are doing. And just like on our resumes, if you're not articulating well enough what your capabilities are, you're not going to be doing the right job, or you're not even going to be offered the job. So it's going to be the same thing for agents. So it's going to become more and more critical to have that proper documentations for all the different operations that we are generating for the business, and then making sure that all these APIs are up to standard for performance. So I would say those are going to be the critical things, and I'm seeing that huge shift already with our customers and prospects and partners investing into these AI tools to make sure we're able to create the highest quality assets for our customers.
I can see that. One of the trouble or the pain point in the integration is troubleshooting, because while you are developing, you end up with so many APIs sprawl, so much happening. And while it comes to the managed services, it's always a pain point of troubleshooting. How is AI changing that aspect?
Yeah, I mean, kind of referencing my own experience, when I need to go and use a new piece of technology that I've never used before, and I'm trying to set it up locally on my desktop, my folder path is not going to perfectly align for the installation for it to start working. So a lot of times just referencing ChatGPT to troubleshoot a lot of things have been especially helpful, but we're seeing the same things starting to be incorporated into our own product lines, where we're able to quickly identify what it has been an error, why has this error been created. I'm not going to say too much. I don't want to spoil too many things, but at Dreamforce, there will be a roadmap announcement that I'm really excited for a lot of these things to be showcased. But I think a lot of it is going to be able to search through logs, identify what was that error, and give you possible resolutions, and be able to identify on what level this error is even happening, right? Is it on the infrastructure level? Is it the application? Is it your configuration? Like, majority of times when things go wrong, it is unfortunately configuration issues. So just streamlining that process and giving people a starting point and kind of a first resolution goes a long, long way. And this also helps our support, right? They don't have to go and troubleshoot different tickets. You're just equipping people to be able to resolve their own issues much faster, instead of having a whole day for processing and kind of trying to figure out what needs to be resolved.
Okay. Yep. That sounds very, very exciting. That saves a lot of time and effort from organizations. Before I wrap up, Victoria, is there anything I should have asked you, or any thoughts you want to share?
I think the main thoughts I want to share around just the MuleSoft ecosystem right now, I feel like this is very exciting times. There's so much innovation that is happening. There is so much that we have been partnering with the field, whether it is, again, our partners, whether it's our customers, prospects, just listening to them and understanding in which direction they're going, and really aligning with our product vision into the same direction. So I think this is, such an exciting time, especially as everything is going, it feels like 100 miles an hour. I think we have been able to slow down and be actually partnering with everyone to build out this future. And I think one other thing is kind of going back to the MuleSoft AI chain, my proudest team contributions is that seeing something come from open source and bring the community together. We have customers that are contributing to the connectors. We have partners contributing to the connectors, where there's just so much excitement. And it's excitement about, hey, what the MuleSoft platform has offered as an infrastructure. And now we're able to bring in all of these AI, workflow capabilities and extend that. And it just feels like there's a new revival of excitement from the olden days of when MuleSoft first came out as an open source product, to now kind of almost a resurgence, 20 years later almost.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm looking forward for Dreamforce.
There's a lot of exciting things. So we're definitely going to have to get product onto one of these episodes to sprinkle in some highlights.
Yeah, I think I should target that next. Thank you. Thank you so much, Victoria, for coming and sharing your insights and experiences. Really, really good insights. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's all for this episode of AI Meets API. Thanks for tuning in and being part of the conversation. Be sure to follow so you don't miss future episodes. Until next time, stay curious and stay connected.